Oh, it's working, yeah, sorry. Thought it didn't work. Sorry about that. First of all, I'd like to apologise to people who were on the training session. As you know, due to internet problems, we didn't have a very good episode, but so apologies for that, and apologies that we're not in the main chamber. For the same reason, we've got an internet problem, but I think it's a bit more cosy to be in the Oak Room. So again, a warm welcome from myself and from the Vice Chair, Caroline, who I'm sure most of you know. Apologies then, please, Lisa. Oh, is Chris doing those?
Thank you, Chairman. So we have apologies from councillors Bernard Peters, Ross Ward and Conor Wildman.
Chris, have we got any declaration of interest?
I forgot how to switch this on. No. That's it. That long since I sat in here. I noticed that MPTF is mentioned in the agenda, so I just want to say that I'm partner governor from the County Council on their meetings.
Thank you, Chairman. Just got a declaration of interest on the audit strategy plan, agenda 9, item number 5. I've got a company that's got contracts with Staffordshire County Council for transport.
Okay, thank you very much, Sasha.
Okay.
Right, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of April. I can pass over to Caroline because she attended that meeting. Caroline, can you take over from there?
You need to share your mic, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me on this mic? Yeah, that's fine then. Could we sign that off as a true and do we have enough people here from the last one? Yeah, Anne, you was there. Phil, you was there, wasn't you? No. No? You was there. Brilliant, thank you. Could we sign this off as a true record? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, before we go any further, because obviously there's some new members on this committee, would it be nice just to go around the room to explain who we are and who we represent, if you don't mind? If we start off with Chris. Chris?
Thank you, Chairman. Chris Eberly, Member and Democratic Services Manager. Thank you.
Richard Ford, County Councillor for Watling South in Tamworth.
Ian Wilkes, representing Chesterton and Audley, Newcastle. Arshad Afsar, County Councillor for Burton Town Division.
Philippa Hayden, County Councillor for Chadsmore.
Phil Hewitt, County Councillor. Thank you. But thank you for that warm welcome, Chair. Phil Hewitt for Henson Rawnsley.
Thank you. Janice Sylvester Hall and representing Lichfield City North.
Anne Edgeler, County Councillor for Stafford South East Division.
Caroline Trowbridge, Vice Chair of this committee.
And Mike Worthington, Chairman of the meeting for the Cherney Valley Ward, the nicest division in Staffordshire. I think so, anyway.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Andrews. I'm Head of Audit and Financial Services from Staffordshire County Council.
Hello, my name's Deborah Harris and I'm the Chief Internal Auditor Interim from Staffordshire County Council.
Bernard?
Bernard, you going to join us?
I'm Bernard Williams. I'm a Staffordshire District Council, besides being Staffordshire County Councillor.
And last one in the corner.
And last one in the corner.
You're going to join us?
You're going to join us? John?
John Trader.
Thank you, John. Right, we've all forgotten that in the 5 minutes, but thanks for introduction. We'll go to the review of changes to the Constitution, please.
Thank you again, Chair. So at the annual council meeting on the 20th of May earlier this year, we reported directly on a number of amendments to the Constitution required to reflect changes to decision-making structures. And included in that report were a number of changes to the scheme of delegations for officers, as had been requested by senior leadership team members to reflect day-to-day operational requirements and the council's involvement in wider projects, for example, HS2. In supporting these changes to the Constitution, the leader of the Council, Councillor Alan White, indicated his wish for those changes to be reviewed by this Audit and Standards Committee. For information for those members who are new to the Council, any changes to the Constitution would normally come to this Audit and Standards first and then go on to Council. Because of the timing where we were, we're kind of just doing it a bit back to front. So we're bringing those for your attention now. The changes requiring review are listed in Table 10 and are fairly self-explanatory. And in addition, since that council meeting in May, there are 2 further changes to the Constitution which require your consideration and recommendation for approval to full council in July. These 2 changes are listed in Table 2. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Chris from any member? I'd just like to make a note on page 8, where it says, following consultation with the Cabinet member to develop, implement and monitor a programme of on-street charging for parking schemes. I know it says in practice only schemes that have ever had local member support have ever progressed. I think it's important from my perspective that I think without getting that local member support, I'm very much not in favour of on-street parking, because we need to encourage parking. I think high streets all over the place are struggling. So I think any parking restrictions we put on these things will certainly not help the trade. So that's my personal opinion. Interested in what other members feel.
I'm happy to speak to this item, Chair. The committee is asked to consider the recommendation of Annual Council, again from the 20th of May of this year, that the membership of the Standards Panel for 21-22 comprises the following councillors, who obviously are members of this Audit and Standards Committee anyhow, and that's Councillors Philip Haddon, Graham Hutton, Cowlin Trowbridge, Bernard Williams, and yourself, Chairman Mike Worthington.
Just like if any of those members don't wish to stand on that committee, if they let myself know, we can always put a substitute in, or if they can't attend, if they let me know, that'd be fine. Thank you. Agenda item 6, Staffordshire County Council Provisional Audit Plan Report.
Oops, sorry. So, Chairman, I do believe that we are joined on the call now by Mark Russell from Ernst & Young, who will now speak to this item. So this is where we hope and pray that the technology works, and there we have it. Yeah. Fantastic.
Hello all. Well, I was actually waiting for Helen Henshaw as the associate partner on the call, who was going to take you through the reports. She was due to join in the minute, because I think she was meant to join only 5 minutes before the allotted time. So I don't know if we can wait for Helen. Is that possible?
Mark, it's Chris Ebley speaking here. Are you down to present the next item, which is Staffordshire Pension Fund Outline Audit Plan?
I'm not.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. Through you, Chairman, then, may I suggest that we move to agenda item 8, Information Governance Annual Statement, which I believe is Lisa to present?
Yeah, that's fine. Carry on.
And then we come back when we're joined by Ernst & Young.
Yeah, that's fine, please.
The Information Governance Annual Statement is presented by Natalie Morrison.
Right. So,
is everyone happy with that?
Okay. So, thank you, Chair. So, this report sets out the proposed content and coverage of the Internal Audit Plan and Strategy for 21-22. The plan is set out in detail on pages 117 to 147 of your pack and is accompanied by a PowerPoint presentation, which I'll just load on now. Just bear with me while I just load my screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. So the purpose of today's presentation is really to demonstrate to the committee that there is a robust methodology for setting the 21-22 audit plan, and to also provide comfort to members of the committee that the plan focuses on those key risks for the council. Hopefully today as well I will be able to confirm that the plan achieves a balance between setting planned work for the year and also allows that flexibility for any changing risks and emerging risks as well as the year progresses. So the audit strategy starts off on page 109 of your pack, and the audit strategy is a key governance document. It's produced annually and updated and reviewed by internal audit, and it's brought before you to be endorsed by the committee today. It sets out some key elements within the strategy, primarily focusing on the risk assessment process that we go to when we identify auditable areas to review, the key principles that we apply when we're formulating the plan, and also sets out the resources needed to deliver the plan. In terms of how the plan is formulated, well, it's fair to say it's not internal audit's plan as such, it's the council's plan. So we do an awful lot of consultation with many officers at all various tiers throughout the council, from OMT, WOLT, SLT. We also liaise with Lisa as the head of internal audit and Rob Salmon as the county treasurer, but we all need to contribute to that plan in order to add value to the council's operations. In terms of the key principles applied, and so when we're thinking about what piece of work to include in the plan, as a general principle, we only include those areas that are high risk, so that's anything with an audit risk scoring of 60% or higher. We identify the top risk audits for review, and that's important because in accordance with our reporting protocol, they come back to the audit committee, those reports in full. We also have a good full balance of financial systems audit reviews, which is what you'd want to see, because obviously it's important that we have robust, strong financial management. And we also have a schools audit programme as well, which this year has been enhanced with the use of a specific fraud risk assessment as well. We have 200 days within the counter-fraud plan to conduct special investigations, and we also have a contingency allocation pot of time as well, which does allow us to respond to emerging risks as we go through the year. You'll also see in a moment or two that we have within the counter-fraud plan various elements of proactive counter-fraud work as well, which is our preventative work, and we have a number of compliance reviews, not just schools but other compliance reviews such as district area offices where we go out and do various establishment audits. So in terms of the resource requirement for 21-22, you will see from the table that's on the screen now that there's 2,095 days associated with the delivery of the county plan. We also have 382 days associated with external clients, and that includes academies, the pension fund, and also South Staffordshire Council, where we were fortunate to win the contract to provide the whole of their audit services for the next 3 years. So that's an extra 240 days worth of income that will come into the council during the year. There are sufficient resources to deliver the plan. We not only have our in-house team, we also have available the internal audit framework contract where we can actually buy in resources from the private sector, which we do find is very beneficial because it allows us to mix and match resources and skills to make sure the right person's doing the right job with the right skills. So in terms of our top risk audits for the year, this slide shows what they are. I won't run through all of them because you would have seen this in your pack earlier. So we're obviously going to be giving assurance over the Council's digital strategy and transformation programme. There are various projects that we'll be giving audit support to during the year, including Microsoft 365 and also the Care Director upgrade, and there'll be a full application security review done in that area. As you would expect, we're continuing to support the Council in response to the COVID-19 response and recovery plans, and there's various pieces of work associated with COVID-19 that are in the plan for 21-22. Again, as you would expect, SEND has made an appearance over the last few years, and it's mentioned from time to time by the external auditor. So again, that continues to be a top risk area that we want to keep abreast of during the year. And also, there's a good helping of governance type audits as well that we're going to be looking at during the year, from looking at culture, values and behaviours, and also compliance with our corporate decision making arrangements. One of the new areas that makes it into the top risk reviews is around equality, diversity, inclusion, and with the Black Lives Matter movement that really came to the fore last year, we thought it would be beneficial to look at our strategy for that and the delivery plan associated with that. So hopefully many of those areas will resonate with you in terms of what are the key risks faced by the Council for the year ahead. In terms of the key financial audits, as you would expect, we have a cyclical review programme of financial audits. We always look at payroll and budgetary control because they are crucial to the strong financial management of the Council. This year we're also going to include a review of VAT. Sales to cash continues to make an appearance within the audit plan, procure to pay and also e-payments. And we're going to be doing a follow-up exercise on back security. We looked at that a few years ago, so that's one of those areas that we're going to revisit during the 21-22. I've mentioned it earlier, some of the governance audits that we're looking at feature culture, values and behaviour. So that's really looking at how, as a council, we express what our values are and how we define expected behaviours. We're also going to be looking at the corporate decision-making arrangements, along with the completion of the community impact assessments as well, and how they're monitored. So it's not just a tick box exercise, but they're continually monitored once those reports are produced. We'll continue to act as the lead authority for the pensions pooling arrangements, and we keep up to date the assurance framework for that. And again, I've just mentioned the equality, diversity and inclusion piece of work. So in terms of COVID-19, last year we did an awful lot of work to support the Council in relation to its response to COVID, and that work will continue in 21-22. We have got COVID-19 grant work, which can be found on pages 138 to 140 of your pack in terms of the detail. And we also have other general COVID-19 audit work, which is on pages 142 to 143 of your pack. And that work includes back to business initiatives and the various funding and how those monies are spent, the contact tracing IT system, and also the holiday activities and food programme as well. There's also a lot of other work that's semi-connected with COVID-19, such as remote working, which we're doing an awful lot more of, volunteer management, so we'll be looking to see how we've harnessed that army of volunteers that came into place last year. And we're also going to be doing lots of other work around the communities principle as well, and the delivery plan, which again features very much on community working, volunteer management and the like. This slide just shows where we all fit within that jigsaw puzzle, which is our assurance framework. And you may have all seen this before. So it's the 3 lines of defence. So you've got the various management controls at the first line of defence. You've got the management oversight, which is the second. Internal audit is the third, and which is also supported by external audit as well. And as you can see, we all feed up into the audit and Standards Committee, which is running across the whole top of those 3 lines of defence. And by knowing what we do and why we do it and how we fit into the organisation, that really sort of helps us understand and put context to our operations and also our behaviours. And it also feeds into our culture of the organisation as well. A very quick mention of the counter-fraud plan 21-22. So the details of that can be found on pages 144 to 146 of your pack. And our work is split across 5 main headings relating to our strategic work, which is largely around looking at policies and procedures, fraud-proofing various policies that we have, creating an anti-fraud culture. That work primarily relates to the various communications and the training that we conduct and the various communications that go around the council. Our Prevent and Deter programme, that work largely centres around our continuous controls monitoring exercises, detection, which is our proactive work, and our investigations, which is that 200 days of time that we allot to any special investigations that occur during the year. Having a quick look at what continuous controls monitoring is, which I'll just shorten to CCM for the rest of this presentation. We use, as you know, the council has an awful lot of data, a lot of data sets, and this is where we're trying to use data to highlight those sort of red flags or anything that may be of a concern. And it really does allow us to target our resources into those potentially problematic areas. We use a software package IDEA to help interrogate the various data sets, and we tend to look at things relating to expense claims, purchasing cards, creditors, mileage claims, and various other pieces of data. And we found that this came into its own last year, where by doing this CCM work, we did highlight a significant fraud that occurred in relation to purchase cards. So it is well worth using the council's data to try and help and detect fraud. Also, during 21-22, we're going to commence a CCM programme specifically for schools, where we're going to, again, try and use some of the red flag sort of knowledge that we have relating to schools to try and target potentially irregular transactions. This slide just gives you a quick flavour of those top fraud risks faced by the council for 21-22. At the top, and probably as you would expect, we have cyber. There's the failure to prevent bribery, abuse of position in relation to the procurement processes. We have bank mandate fraud, and later on, when we get to the outturn report, I'll very quickly mention the attempted bank mandate fraud that happened very early on in 2020. So we also have school transport as well, and again, I shall mention that area when we talk about the outturn report a little bit later. In terms of how the plan is delivered, we have an in-house team. We do have a commitment to grow our own, so we currently have 2 apprenticeships that are taking place at the moment. We also use the external framework contract as well to buy in those skills necessary to undertake some of those more specific specialist pieces of work. So just to wrap up very quickly, in terms of the key highlights to take away today, hopefully my presentation will have demonstrated to you that we have emphasis on strong financial management and controls with our cyclical work of financial systems audits. We will focus on those key corporate transformational IT and digital projects, and I've named those on the slide there. We'll continue to give support to the COVID response and recovery arrangements for the council, including grant work. We will also focus on delivering good governance, and we also have time in the plan to respond to those emerging risks as we go through the course of the year. We'll also continue to look at procurement and contract management activities of various audits that relate to some of the council's larger contract areas. And we'll also give attention to some of our key partnerships. So we have work in relation to Entrust, AMI, MPFT, the LEP, and also Midlands Engine. It's also worth noting that we work very closely with the Information Governance Unit, and therefore we do complement what we do with them. We do complete compliance GDPR checklists where it's appropriate to do so, where personal data is being used as part of audits, or being looked at as part of audits, I should say. And we have a full programme of ICT audits as well, which you'll see in the audit plan. Finally, it is worth mentioning that we are participating in the Regional Staffordshire Counter Fraud Partnership that's been recently set up via Stoke City Council, and there'll be various communications that will go out during the year in relation to that. In terms of how we respond to emerging risks, we'll regularly liaise with the various levels across the council, WRT, OMT. We also have real-time recommendation tracking, which will allow us to see how controls are improving throughout the year. And where appropriate, we'll adopt agile auditing approaches, and that means where we don't always have to produce a full-blown full report. Sometimes we're giving a lot responsive audit work at the point it's needed when the project is up and away. So it's giving the right approach at the right time to the right people at the right depth. So hopefully today my presentation has shown that we do have a robust methodology to formulate the plan, that the plan focuses on those key risk areas faced by the council. Also, hopefully I've demonstrated that we have that, whilst we have a planned programme of work, we also have that flexibility to change and swap and substitute work in during the course of the year. And also we have sufficient resources to deliver the whole of the plan for 21-22, which will allow us to form our annual audit opinion. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions in relation to that plan.
Well, thank you for that presentation. I think it's fairly straightforward. Has any members got any questions? Yes, please. Go on, Anne.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 117, we talk about children's mental health, and it says there's a new £1 million contract of 5 providers into one. Can you give us a little bit more feedback on that, please?
Thank you for the question. I need to go away and find that detail, but I can provide that after this meeting if that's okay. The piece of work will be done during the year. I think it's in Q3 that piece of work will be carried out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. A huge amount of detail, I would say, as a newcomer to this committee within there. But could you just elaborate a little bit more about the schools audit programme that you mentioned? And is that local authority, academies, I think I heard in there as well? Thank you.
So we undertake a programme of 20, well, it's one PRU and 19 audits, high schools and primary schools and special schools. We undertake a compliance programme that looks at procurement, income and expenditure, all the various financial systems, and we almost do mini systems within audits within that. On top of that, schools, if they have academised, can buy in our internal audit service as well, but we're very much reliant on the academies coming to us, and if they wish to have our services, we can provide that service to them.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that quite detailed report. As somebody who's very new to this committee, probably 30 minutes in, I'm either going to ask the most obvious question or the daftest one you've heard, so you can decide which one it is. When I look at the key risks, one of the committees that I've sat on is that involves with children in care. And I don't see anything about children in care being a key risk. Now, what I experienced in that, so you sort of on this committee, I think we'll probably bring our previous experiences to it, was certainly a volatile number of children in care. Certainly, in all the time I was on there, 3 to 4 years, it rose and rose and rose. And what I don't see is a key risk to sort of the financial risk or the children there, not mentioned at all. I see sort of all other things. Am I wrong in that's missing, or have I missed it? Thank you.
It's not missing. The Children's Transformation Programme and everything that goes along with that has been included as a top 10 risk previously. We have got various elements of children's services within this audit plan for 21-22. And as part of the 2021 plan, and you'll see in the outturn, we have various pieces of work, such as the plan-based approach for children's transformation, and we've previously looked at the governance arrangements for children's.
So excuse the simplicity of my question again. So we don't now consider it a key risk then, is that what we're saying? Or did I mishear you?
Sorry, could you just repeat that question?
No problem. My accent doesn't help, does it? So unless I misheard you, we now don't consider that a key risk.
It is still a key risk. It just hasn't made it into what we would class as our sort of top 10 at the moment, purely because of the previous coverage that we've given it. We do need to sort of split our coverage across other areas that we've not previously looked at.
Thank you for the answer. I probably haven't got enough knowledge of this committee to sort of challenge that. I feel as though it maybe should be challenged.
I could answer you a little bit better because she's been on the audit a while. Do you want to try and answer?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And thank you for your answer.
Phil, this did come to the committee, and this was well before, you know, they had the 8 million extra funding. It all came through here, and we were saying they need help, this needs to change. And so we were part of that 8 million funding, really, is in my view. And once that money's in place, it's no longer up there as a huge risk because they've got the money to deal with it at the moment. It'll come back when that money runs out and they're going, is my guess. So, but yes, I did have a question as well, if that's all right, Deborah. I think Phil wants to come back. Oh, you want to come back? Sorry.
Just a courtesy. Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for allowing me to sort of labour that one a little bit. Really appreciate it, and thank you for the answer, Caroline. Thank you.
Actually, you know, no questions at the moment are going to be silly because we've got background knowledge. You're first here, so ask away all the time. Please do. This is, I know you will, Phil, but everybody, please do. And Deborah is a fountain of knowledge. She could sit for hours with you anyway, put it that way. Yeah, all I was going to say is 2020-2021 has been the most challenging year for everybody. And yet your programme is so full here. I'm just so impressed. And even to have 2 apprentices, I'm in awe of your team. This is absolutely brilliant. I hope that's going to continue. I hope you're going to get more apprentices in and train within. But yeah, absolutely, this gives me comfort and assurance, and I just wanted to put that on record.
Arshan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one back on the apprentices. Within the PowerPoint presentation, obviously there's a commitment to grow our own by using the apprenticeship levy. Is this the best way to ensure the skills of the county needs are available? How will the apprenticeships be managed to ensure the people for the work for the people involved? And are there such apprenticeship schemes already being used within the area, within the county?
Yes, so we currently have 2 apprenticeships at the moment, and they're both doing CMIA, which is the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors. That is a very good professional qualification that really does allow them to build up their skills in relation to auditing. Once they have completed their studies, it'll be a rolling programme. We've also earmarked 2 other individuals, one in relation to counter fraud to supplement our current specialist resources in relation to fraud, and another individual that we're earmarking to do the Institute of Internal Auditors as well. The idea of using and doing the apprenticeship is a very good way of ensuring that all of our staff become qualified, and also it allows us to, I suppose, retain them as well, because there's nothing better than having experienced auditors. So by giving them that qualification, it allows them hopefully to want to stay with us, and you can't beat your own in-house experienced team building up that knowledge as they go through the years. So, and it gives them that motivation as well to continue and develop.
From my perspective, I just feel that I wouldn't like to be running this audit because the top 10 fraud risks are quite frightening. And from my perspective, I think the purchase card misuse is such an easy one. It's like giving us all credit cards and giving you like a no-limit credit card. I think the risk on these purchase cards is quite onerous, and I'm very pleased that's one of your top 10 things you're looking at for this current year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was good to hear that you've got business with South Staffordshire District Council. One of the parishes had a precept of 103% this particular year. How will your work with South Staffordshire District Council help parish councils, especially those that get into such trouble as Essington did with 103% precept?
In terms of district councils, our audit plan will only cover the district council. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover parish councils. So we won't provide any coverage for parish councils and how they manage their finances or their controls, unfortunately.
Are there any other questions before we move on? Andy, you want?
Sorry. On page 132, you talk about the Mental Health Act again, and 600 people receiving aftercare services at a cost of £16 million per annum. How is that money spent with the 600 people, and where are these services coming from? You know, it's a huge amount of money. I just wondered if you could give some more feedback on that, please.
Chair, that will be a question that we can ask of the service and respond. Obviously, the audit will pick up on how those finances have been spent, so it's a bit too early for us to actually comment on that at the moment.
So will you come back? Sorry, Chair. Will you come back on that? Thank you.
The audit is spent. They can't say where the money is going to go. That's the audit. If it's been spent wisely, is that correct?
Yeah.
Chris, we'll go back to agenda item 6 now, is it?
Yeah. Yes, Chairman. So, Helen, I think you've now joined us on the call from Ernst & Young. Is that right? Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, Chris.
Thank you. So, yeah, we're now moving back to agenda item 6, which I believe is what you're going to be presenting to now.
Absolutely. I'll present my slides. Okay, so I've realised that there are many members of the committee today. So whilst I'm going to treat the report as read and just highlight the things which are most important to the committee, I do welcome any questions you might have on either any of the areas that I touch on, or in fact any that I don't. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have into the report. Just to introduce myself, so I haven't met most people on the committee. My name's Helen Henshaw. I'm an associate partner with Ernst & Young, and I'll lead the external audit of the County Council for the financial year ended 31st of March 2021. And what you have in your papers this morning is our audit plan that's about how we will go about performing that audit. I'm going to first on to pages 5 and 6 of the plan, which effectively talks through the key risks identified with respect to the financial statement audit. So the first two risks identified on page 5, which talk about the risk of fraud in revenue and expenditure recognition and misstatements due to fraud and error, are risks which auditors are required to identify on every audit, so not just Staffordshire County Council, but we do consider whereabouts in the financial statements of the council those types of risks might occur. And just to put them sort of in more layman's speak, if you like, risk of fraud in revenue and expenditure recognition is really talking about where can the council potentially record its revenue or expenditure inappropriately, either intentionally or by mistake, such that the effect of that would be to show a reported outturn for the financial year that was more beneficial than was actually the case. And misstatements due to fraud and error is talking about the fact that regardless of how good any system of internal control might be, The very fact that management are in a position to override those controls or go around those controls inevitably gives a risk of fraud or error due to management intervention effectively, and that risk is talking to that point. In addition, we've identified as a significant risk the valuation of property, plant and equipment, specifically the land and buildings. The land and buildings that the council owns and operates are under the accounting code, which the council has to follow. They're required to be revalued on a rolling cycle every 5 years. It can be quite difficult and quite challenging to value land and buildings, and there are a number of assumptions and estimations within those valuations which can give rise to quite sizable variations in value and potential error. So that's identified as a significant risk, and that is exactly the same situation as was in the prior year audit. We've also identified what we call an inherent risk, so not quite so pervasive and sizable as the valuation of land and buildings, but an inherent risk around the disposal of schools when they convert to academies. So when a school converts to an academy status, it's effectively disposed of by the council and removed from the balance sheet position of the council. And in previous years, we have noted a number of errors in terms of the timeliness of removing those schools from the council's accounts. There were no errors found in the previous year, so hopefully the council have got sufficient controls in place around that particular point now, but we've left it on there as an inherent risk, but noting that's a downgrade from the previous year because of the lack of issues found. Last one on page 5, the local government pension scheme. The Staffordshire County Council is a administrator of the Staffordshire Pension Scheme. The local government pension scheme, as many of you will probably know, is a multi-employer scheme. There are significant assumptions built into the values of both the assets and the liabilities that appear on the council's balance sheet at the period end date, and therefore the susceptibility to error in those figures is reasonably great. So we identify an inherent risk over the local government pension scheme. Moving us on to page 6, the council don't prepare group accounts, and that's on the grounds that it's the 3 companies that it holds investments in, so Entrust, Pender and Nexus, are immaterial to the council, both qualitatively and quantitatively. We've identified that as an inherent risk, just to be alert to the fact that that definition of group boundary and whether it still makes sense to not consolidate those entities into the county council makes sense in a changing environment, so that's why that's there. PFI accounting, private finance initiative, for those who haven't come across that, the council has got 4 schemes. These schemes are extremely complex, and there's significant amount of disclosure required in the financial statements with regards to PFI schemes. So we identify this as another financial statement risk and an area of focus for our audit work. In addition, given the pressure that COVID has put upon, well, the economy in general, but specifically local authorities in the need to respond to the pandemic, we have identified the going concern as a particular area of audit focus. That's partly because of COVID and the impact that has obviously had on council's finances more generally, but also because there's an increase in the amount of audit work required in respect of going concern now, and that's driven by a revised auditing standard, which is effective for this financial year, the year ended 31st of March 2021. Now, given that COVID, unfortunately for us all, has been around for the whole of the 2021 financial year, we haven't put that in and of itself as a specific area of audit focus for the year in the same way that it was last year, because effectively we've planned the whole audit with COVID in mind. And so, for example, when we are looking at revenue and expenditure recognition, we will particularly be looking at how the numerous COVID grants that the council have received in year have been accounted for, and whether they they've been accounted for in line with the conditions that go along with those grants. If I just move us on to page 8. Page 8 of our audit plan communicates to you the planning materiality levels that we have set. So materiality, for those of you who are new to the committee, is effectively the numerical quantification of how much the accounts would have to be out by in order to affect the decisions made by the readers of those financial statements. So it's all about influencing decisions that people might take based on the information that's presented in the financial statements. And we have set materiality as 1% of the gross expenditure from the prior year financial statements, and that's 10.9 million. And the 1% is consistent with what's been used in the past. We then take planning materiality and we effectively scale that back to a figure which we call performance materiality, which is effectively looking at materiality on an account by account basis. So, for example, how much would revenue have to be wrong by before we were assuming that that would influence a decision taken by a user of the financial statements. At Ernst & Young, we set performance materiality at either 50% of planning materiality or 75% of planning materiality. The biggest determinant of whether you're at 50% or 75% is our assessment of how likely it is there will be errors within the accounts based on previous year's experience. Therefore, we've set performance materiality at 50%, which is consistent with the prior year and reflects the adjustments that have been made to the accounts in previous years. The audit differences amount of just over £500,000 is that level above which we consider that items found in the accounts in error would not be considered clearly trivial. And we will bring all those matters to your attention in the fullness of time when we report back to the committee. Anything below £500,000, we will consider it clearly trivial and won't report it back to the committee. Now, as I said, I myself am the engagement lead for the 2021 financial year, taking over from a colleague of mine who, those of you who've been on the committee before will have known, Steve Clark. Also new to the team this year is Mark Russell, who's on the call today. Mark's a manager in our government and public sector audit team, and he will manage the audit with me through the 2021 financial year end. Let's just move us on to page 18, which looks at the value for money considerations. So again, those of you who are new to the committee, just to explain, the external audit actually offers two sources of assurance, if you like. One is the financial statement opinion, are the accounts true and fair? The other one is a conclusion around the council's arrangements for ensuring value for money in respect of 3 specific reporting criteria, which are noted towards the bottom left of page 18. So we look at financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. Now, there has been a change in the code which governs what auditors are required to do around VFM for the 2021 financial year. So previously, we will have identified significant risks to value for money, reported those to the committee, done some work around that, and then reported our findings. And if appropriate, that would have either resulted in a clean or unqualified value for money conclusion in our audit opinion, or some sort of qualification in the audit opinion to alert the reader of the accounts to a particular issue that may have arisen. What's changed for the current year is that actually the audit committee can expect to see a far more detailed and lengthy commentary around the value for money arrangements that the council has in place, and we will report that back to you in a new document that we're required to report called the Auditor's Annual Report, which will be provided to the committee either as the audit opinion is signed or shortly thereafter. We are required under the new code as well, if during the course of our work we identify significant weaknesses within the arrangements, we will report that to you immediately rather than waiting for that final commentary report. So there's a change therefore that therefore in terms of what you can expect from us and also the timing of what you can expect from us. Page 9 of our report just sets out the timetable. We are working very closely with Rob and the team to be in a position to conclude the audit procedures by early September. That's in terms of providing a signed audit opinion. As I mentioned, the auditor's annual report, etc., will likely follow shortly thereafter with the value for money commentary, but that's the timetable that we're following. And then just lastly, page 36 of our report just sets out the current situation with regards to the audit fee. Those of you who follow the financial press will be well aware, I'm sure, of the numerous debates and reviews that are taking place in the public sector around the sustainability of the external audit fee. So Staffordshire County Council are part of the PSAA, Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited joint procurement arrangement, and PSAA sets the fee for the audit of the council, and the scale fee, as it's termed, is set at £84,500 for Staffordshire County Council. We don't believe that that fee is sustainable in terms of an audit simply cannot be delivered to the right quality for that fee. And therefore, we've had discussions with Rob and the team and obviously PSAA and more broader in the public consultations, etc., around where that fee should sit. And our view is it's much more realistic to set a fee for an organisation the size and scale of Staffordshire County Council at £183,000. What I would point out is that's not a figure that's agreed between Rob as the Section 15 officer and myself, although we're both obviously talking about this a lot in terms of what needs to be done to get to that point. And ultimately, the decision holder for that fee arrangement is Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited under the contract that you've entered into. And at that point, Chair, I will stop and ask if anyone has any questions.
Thank you for that very detailed audit risks and everything you've gone through there. It's the last bit I want to ask questions on. That fee of £183,000 that you just mentioned. For we have said for many years that what the government set wasn't high enough, but it was set by the government, I believe. So, one, I don't know how we go about changing that. I'm sure that will come out in time. But two, I'd need to agree to the fee to go up to that much. I'd need from the external auditors an absolute guarantee that it comes back to us on time as well, because that's my worry, is that we're not getting things in on time. I didn't hear you mention about getting accounts done on time. Could you just elaborate what your thoughts are on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The concept of being on time has somewhat morphed, it's fair to say, over the last sort of 12 to 24 months. And if you look at the sector in its entirety, I think it's fair to say that if we describe accounts being on time, as all local authorities having audited accounts by the 30th of September, for example, then in my own personal view, that's not a situation that is going to be achievable for at least the next 12, potentially 24 months, because the backlog in the system is so great now that can't be achieved. What Ernst & Young are doing to address that and to try and turn the juggernaut, if you like, on the situation, is we've taken the decision to prioritise what meet the organisations that meet the definition of a major local audit. They're effectively those organisations, typically of pension fund, county size, which matter in terms of whole of government accounts and ensuring the whole of government accounts can be prepared and have the appropriate assurance on them in time. So for the 2021 audit cycle, we're prioritising the likes of Staffordshire County Council, Staffordshire Pension Fund and others in order to get those accounts finalised first, and the various smaller bodies, of which there are many, district councils, police, fire authorities, etc., will follow in a wave two, for want of a better phrase, in order to try and address some of the backlog in the system. As I said, this situation won't get turned around in a short period of time. There is too much backlog.
Do you mind if I come back there, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we are recruiting more people to help this end. Are you doing the same your end?
Absolutely. Recruitment is doors are open for engineering, but also for all audit firms. This is not an issue that's specific to Ernst & Young. The lack of public sector audit has been very widely debated, and there's a Redmond review as well. The difficulty is effectively all the accounting firms fishing from the same pond in terms of resource.
Yes, I think I got that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm just concerned that obviously these fees have not been agreed yet, and this function is set out by the Secretary of State. I know you mentioned the figure of 183,000, but when you look at the final fee, which is to be confirmed of 81,340 in 2019-20, I know people using COVID-19 as an excuse to obviously to make things have been rather difficult, because obviously you can't get out there and see people and it's all done online. It just seems an extortionate amount of a proposed increase. When are we going to be agreeing this figure? Have you got any idea of timeline or not?
Do you want me to answer that, Chair, or do you want Rob to come in? I've noticed Rob's got his hand up.
It'd be nice to hear from Rob, actually, because he's obviously acting on our behalf. Yes, please, Rob, if you could inform the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the committee. This is a difficult one. It is, as Helen said, a national problem. It's systemic through the whole of the audit sector. There just isn't the capacity to deal with the work that's in hand. In terms of that fee, just to put that into context, a typical district borough council fee might be in the order of about 30 to 40,000. I think if you then compare that to a much larger county council audit with a base fee of just over 84,000, I think that tells you that the starting point isn't right, and I accept that. I agree that. In terms of increases in previous years, there have been increases. So whilst there's been a base fee, we've paid more, and there's a proper process per the contractual arrangements for the agreement of additional fees. So that's already happened. So we're not really starting from an £84,000 start point. It's significantly higher than that. The reason it's not accepted yet is because I won't accept it until I know that a revised arrangement works. And the pandemic was a bit of a shame on this part, because we had endeavoured last year to undertake a review of the resource requirement, which leads to an agreed fee, and then test it to make sure it works, to pick up exactly that point that Carolyn mentioned about timeliness, because the last thing any of us want is the delays that have sort of plagued us for a couple of years. So at the moment, what I can say is that I've seen very detailed assessments and calculations of resource required from the audit team. They appear reasonable and sensible to me. That then leads to a particular fee level. However, I want to use this audit to test it, to see that it actually works before I finally agree any increase. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Thanks for that. I think that will help members.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in fact, it was coming in on that particular point, and some of those questions that I had there have been answered by that part. I was interested to see if it takes about 2,300 hours, and with the figures being quoted, then you're looking at just short of £80 an hour for every time that conduct happens. So I think that the rest of that will come through from what's just been said there. On a separate quick question, was just looking at something that was mentioned about the materiality at 1% had been used in the past. Is that indicative of what would be used elsewhere then? Not just historically, that's what's being done, but that is appropriate for this type of organisation?
Yes, we have standard percentages that we apply for different types of organisation, as you might imagine. And given the size and the nature and the risk attached to Staffordshire County Council, 1% would be fairly consistent with what other audit firms would use.
We'll move on then, Chris. Can we go to the... Thank you again for your presentation, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, again. So the next item on the agenda is item 7, which is the Staffordshire Pension Fund Outline Audit Plan. And I'm just checking if we are joined now by Hassan. I can't see him. Oh, yeah, we are. Beg your pardon, he's on the screen now. Sorry, Hassan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'll take you through the external audit plan for our audit of Staffordshire Pension Fund. Just by way of introduction, my name's Hassan Rohim, and like Helen, I'm an associate partner with EY. In addition to the audit of Staffordshire Pension Fund, I'm also responsible for the external audit of 3 other local government pension schemes. In terms of the areas which I'll highlight, first of all, in relation to our audit plan, I'll take you to your page 65, our page 5 of the report, which provides an overview of the audit strategy, the risks that we've identified in respect of our audit of the pension fund, and provides details in relation to those risks and a comparison to the prior year, similar to as Helen has just outlined for the audit of the main council audit. The first 2 risks are risks which are presumed by international standards on auditing, and outlines our responses to those risks. We also highlight the third one there as a significant risk that we've identified, which relates to the valuation of complex investments. So they are investments which are categorised as level 3 investments within the financial statements of the pension funds. So they're categorised as hard to value because there are no readily available market data at any given point in time to provide you as the a reader of the financial statements as an independent source of what the valuation may be for those particular types of assets. They generally relate to private equity and pooled private property investments. So we need to undertake a degree of additional procedures in relation to auditing the valuation of those types of investments in order to gain assurance that the valuations as at the balance sheet date are properly stated. The other 2 risks which are highlighted within the plan are classified as inherent risks, and they relate to going concern. So as Helen's already outlined for the main council audit, there are issues that we need to undertake in respect of assessing the going concern of the pension fund to continue meeting its obligations for the 12 months from the balance sheet date. And also we've highlighted inherent risk, the valuation of directly held property, and that's because there are significant assumptions which are made in the valuation of those property. We outline on page 6 of our report materiality levels that we'll be using in undertaking our audit. Similarly to the main council audit, we're using a percentage of 1%, and that's based on 1% of net assets for the pension fund, as opposed to operating expenditure, which is used for the main council audit. And then we highlight there our performance materiality level of 75% and the audit difference threshold above which we will report differences to you within our audit results report. We also summarise within the executive summary the scope of our audit and the timeline, and provide information on fees. I won't propose to go into the rest of the report in any greater detail. Section 2 of the report provides further information in respect of the risks that have been identified, provides details on those risks and the proposed procedures that we've put in place to respond to those risks. Section 3 of the report provides additional information in respect of the materiality levels that we're going to be using. Section 4 provides more information in relation to the scope of our audit, our responsibilities. One thing to point out is that in contrast to the main county council audit, for the audit of the pension fund, we do not have a responsibility under the Code of Audit Practice to undertake any value for money work. So our audit on the pension fund is solely looking at the financial statements and providing an opinion on the financial statements. Section 5, we highlight the timetable that we're going to be following in relation to aiming to deliver the work by the 30th of September. In Section 6, we importantly confirm our independence and outline the assessments that we've undertaken in relation to come to that view. And in Section 7, in the appendices, we do provide details on the audit fees for the pension fund. Similarly to the main council audit, we've been having discussions in respect to the fees that are required to undertake the work that we need to undertake to give the opinion that we need to give. And as Helen has already highlighted, the level of fees in terms of the scale fees, which are set by the PSAA, are not sufficient in order to deliver the opinion for a local government pension scheme. Happy to take any questions on the audit plan.
I think we're all very satisfied with the presentation. I mean, the pension is what it is, and I mean, I've got no questions. I don't think any members have. So we'll move on, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Hazan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, through you, Chair, if I may, unfortunately Tracy Thorley, who was due to be presenting this item, has had to leave to depart for another meeting. But we are joined anyway by Natalie Morrissey, who's the Information Governance Manager, who's going to talk through this report to the committee.
Over to you, Natalie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say that the annual information governance report is designed to give yourselves and the rest of the county council assurance that we are complying with a set of regulations, including Data Protection Act, GDPR, FOI, EIR, RIPA, which also includes surveillance, and the Transparency Code. This report does run from the 1st of April 2020 until the 31st of March 2021. So if there's no specific queries on the report, what I would like to spend this time doing is to update you on further progress made on certain functions. So if that's okay, I'd like to proceed with drawing your attention to the section that starts at paragraph 5, which is all to do with information security. That there are quite a few paragraphs here which deal with cyber security, and I am aware that cyber is a completely separate item later on the agenda, so I won't go into that in too much detail now, but I would like to draw your attention to paragraph 9, which actually talks about information security incidents. So my team are responsible for monitoring incidents, for putting any mitigation in place, looking at trends. You know, how are these incidents happening? What can we do to prevent them moving forward? This is quite an important area because there are certain incidents that if they meet criteria, we do have to report to the Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours. So it is imperative that, you know, all staff are aware that they can identify a breach and they know to report it to us quickly, so that the information governance team can do that initial assessment to see whether it is reportable or not. We do have to report incidents to the ICO from time to time, but we do manage that and work with the ICO to resolve those. When we do report to the ICO, one of the first things they always ask us is to evidence that all staff have received training in data protection. You may be aware that data protection and cybersecurity training are now mandatory, and we do report monthly to SLT and yourselves on the training stats. So that is something that we are working through, and that's why it's so important for us to ensure the majority of staff do receive that training within 12 months. Because if we didn't, the ICO wouldn't look too favourably on us for that. So that it is really important that we do that. If I move down to item 16, this is quite a major piece of work that we are doing currently. The information governance team have created an information management strategy which sets out our plan of action between now and 2024, which will ensure that we are compliant with the regulations, that we have excellent records management, and we've got a streamlined systems in place to help people find data and understand the value of data much easier than they can now. We do have a very large area of unstructured data, and part of this information management strategy is to look at that and embed an EDRMS system, which is an electronic document records management system, which does have inbuilt compliance, and that is a major piece of work that we are looking at over the next 12 months plus. This will ensure that retention is all inbuilt, and it will be compliant with data protection. This is a culture change. It will take a while to embed, but that is, as I say, it's a major piece of work, and I do look forward to reporting back to you at a later date with progress made on that. If I move further down, that there are two items that maybe people are unaware that the information governance team are responsible for, and that's in the area of RIPA, which is the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. So this deals with all types of surveillance, whether that's overt or covert. We have done a major piece of work over the past 12 months looking at the new surveillance code of practice. This is a regulation which governs us to make sure that we are aware of all CCTV, all body cams, anything like that, and make sure that it is managed compliantly with that code of practice. So that is another quite large piece of work that we are doing. At this point, and those were the main items that I wanted to bring your attention to. Are there any questions at this stage?
Yeah, good morning. Just a couple of things just to clarify in my own mind, please. So when a report needs to be made, obviously speed is of the essence. So can you just explain how those reports can be made? And the second one is looking at issues to do with home working. And with the prospect of home working continuing in the future, how can those additional risks be mitigated? Thank you.
Okay, so when you mentioned the reports, did you mean the information security reports, just to clarify?
Or any breaches that need to be reported?
Right. Yeah, we do have a very robust process where a member of staff who becomes aware of a breach We've got an online form for them to complete, which basically gives us all the information we need to make that initial assessment as to whether it is reportable or not. A great deal of investigation doesn't need to be carried out. This is something that we have found in the past where people will do a bit of investigation themselves before coming to us, and that has led to a bit of a delay. So we have raised the awareness that as soon as something happens, tell us straight away, and those messages are slowly getting through. There are areas, it is something that we report on where incidents are reported outside of the 72 hours, and that is something that we are working through to improve on that. Looking at home working, we did see a rise in incidents last April when people did start working from home. It's very difficult at this stage to correlate that directly with working from home, or is it because people were a lot busier because maybe they'd got colleagues who were isolating or out of work for other reasons. Maybe it was the increased workload. We're not too sure, but we definitely did see a rise in April. That has steadied out. It is starting to come down again. But one thing we do need to be mindful of is as people become aware, and it's not only an awareness of how to report, it's also having the confidence to do it. We obviously want people to feel comfortable to report issues to us, and with the increased training, that increased awareness, that can actually see an increase in incidents. So sometimes more training and more awareness, you do see that bit of a spike because people do have that confidence. And it's one thing we always say, it's always the process that we investigate rather than the person. A lot of it is human error. We don't see malicious attacks in any way. So that is something we are closely monitoring. The other issues with working from home, that there may be more distractions. It may be that there are other people that are coming in and out of the house, whether that's family members. So we do encourage people to think about confidentiality, what conversations they're having, what room they're in, who else can hear. So those are messages that we are getting across. There's also the issue of confidential waste. It's very easy to get rid of confidential waste in the office. You just pop it in the confidential bins. At home, you do have to think a little bit more, and not using public bins, etc. Shredding, if some people have shredders at home. So those are things that we are building on. We have built those into the home working guidance that's been issued.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that, actually, because I think as we continue to move and work in the way that we are, that it is a supportive process and a sympathetic one. People have been responding in ways that we're asking them to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily have done to do their jobs. So I'm really pleased that it is that supportive environment that's being pursued there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you for that response. Well, again, thank you for your report, and we'll move on, Chris, if you can, to agenda item 10. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The item before you is the Code of Corporate Governance Annual Refresh. This is a key document in our governance framework, and hopefully members will recall when we had the training session that Diana from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, the acronym CIPFA, made reference to this as being a key document within our framework, and that should be refreshed on an annual basis to ensure that it accurately reflects the governance arrangements that are in place at this time. The code that you have before you today for approval is based on that CIPFA code that was published in 2016. And we do make reference to the 7 principles, core principles of governance with regard to how we operate and then what we do to ensure compliance with those principles. The document that's attached to the report is the local code, and from pages 174, that outlines specifically how each of those individual principles are met within the county council and how they operate. That's refreshed through the Corporate Governance Working Group, another acronym that's actually often referred to as the CGWG group, the Corporate Governance Working Group. That's refreshed on an annual basis, and relevant officers throughout the council contribute to that document. In order to ensure that we actively improve and keep under review the arrangements that are in place, we will identify any actions that we need to take in year. They are incorporated in the document within the action plan for 21-22. Now, this document has been through various refreshers since its inception in 2016, and therefore the number of actual improvements are reducing year on year. So there are a few. We will monitor those throughout the year to ensure that they're done and incorporate them in the 22 version of this particular document. The code itself, compliance against this, is reported as part of the review of the effectiveness of the governance framework that's incorporated within the annual governance statement, which will come through to yourselves for approval as part of the final accounts process. And that's the key standard document to report any major governance issues affecting the county council. So I would ask for members to approve the refresh, and this document will then go to be published on our intranet site within the organisation. So happy to take any questions regarding the information contained.
Any questions to Lisa? I think...
Just an observation, absolutely, we'd approve this. It's a very detailed and well-written document.
Yeah, I think if that's okay, if what Caroline says, we'll approve this document. It'll be published on the intranet, won't it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So this is the Internal Audit Annual Outturn Report for the financial year 2021. So page 191 of your pack sets out some further background information as to why we need to have an annual outturn report. So the UK Public Sector Internal Audit Standards, which I will shorten to PSIAS for the remainder of this presentation, requires that internal audit provides an internal audit opinion on the organisation's framework of control, governance and risk management arrangements. The PSIAS also sets out the format of that report, which refers to the need to have an opinion, a summary of the work that supports that opinion, and also a statement on the conformance with the standards. So this report does contain those elements. So for new members of the committee, the audit plan for 2021 was approved back on the 20th of April 2020. However, as you can appreciate, during the year and due to the impact of COVID, various audits were included within the plan and various audits were cancelled. Nevertheless, the audit team delivered 97% of the planned audit work, which I think, given the impact of COVID, was quite an achievement. And I'll come on to those performance measures a bit later on in the presentation. So turning over to 192 of your pack, this gives some further background information as to how we formulate our audit opinion and to give some further context to the audit work that was undertaken. You will see at paragraph 6 towards the top of the page, the controls evaluated during the year were 1,034, and then in terms of the assessment of those controls, you will see that that's split between adequate, partial weaknesses and weak controls. So for those new members of the Audit and Standards Committee, our audit work that we do, we produce a report that gives an opinion which is driven by the number of recommendations that are made, which are high, medium or low. And also we set out all of our work in formulating the annual audit opinion based upon five categories of areas, which is the high risk auditable areas, the main financial systems, other systems work, compliance reviews, and also special investigations. And what we'll have seen during 2020-21, that when it's a limited assurance report or a top risk review, those full audit reports are brought to the Audit and Standards Committee. So turning to the audit plan outcomes for 2021, you will see on page 193 within that table those areas that were the high risk reviews for the year and those audit opinions. And what you will see is that there were 5 limited assurance opinions awarded during the year. On page 194 of your pack, you will see those key high risk issues that were raised during those audits. And later on in the agenda, within the confidential section, you will see that the SEND Transformation Governance Decision-Making Group's piece of work and also the Culture of Cybersecurity, both of those audit reports that were limited assurance will be presented to the Audit and Standards Committee. For those other top risk reviews that haven't previously presented, that have been finalised, these will be discussed with you all at a later meeting of the committee. On page 196 of your pack and in the table, you will see all of the financial systems audit work that's been conducted during the year. And again, what you will see is that there is one limited assurance report relating to sales to cash, which also includes debt recovery. And again, that report is included in full as part of the confidential agenda items. On page 197, you will then see the other systems audit work where there has been limited assurance opinions awarded. There are 5 during the year. Unfortunately, the purchase card internal controls failing report, that can't be presented at this time because we haven't had clearance from the police to issue that to the Audit and Standards, but at the most appropriate time that will come to you. Just it's unfortunate we haven't been able to get that assurance at the moment to send that on to you. There's also a draft limited report in relation to the I+ contract, and again, once that's finalised, that will be brought in full to the Audit and Standards Committee. You will see on pages 198 and 199 the various high-level recommendations that have been made within the other systems audit reviews. Turning to page 200 of your pack, you will then see that we have the compliance reviews that have been carried out. So the compliance reviews incorporate the schools programme and also other compliance audits such as comfort funds, educational endowment funds, which are sort of audits of the statement of accounts. There was a piece of work carried out at district offices and also register offices as well during the year. In terms of the findings from the schools audits, that's detailed on page 200, 201 and all the way through to 203 of your pack. Towards the bottom of page 203, this is where we now start to talk about the special investigation work that was carried out during the year. There is a detailed report which again is included within the confidential agenda, which is on Appendix 2, so I won't go into too much detail at this moment because we'll go into much more detail later on in the meeting. But if you look on page 204 and at the top, you will see that in terms of our special investigations that we have carried out, we have had £184,841 worth of fraud losses. The majority of that relates to the purchase card fraud that happened in the early part of 2020. And for those members that were on the committee this time last year, we'd already flagged up that this was a significant fraud and was likely to affect the whether this category passed or failed for the 2021 outturn. So on page 204, this does give some further information relating to the investigations that were carried out during the year. And again, there's more detail in Appendix 2 a little bit later on in the confidential section. So we received 34 various concerns, 15 related to areas of council activity, and they've been fully investigated. The 184,000, just to put this into a bit more perspective, is an increase on previous year's fraud losses, which is a bit disappointing to note today. At paragraph 31 on page 204 of your pack, this paragraph really sets out what work we've done in relation to the impact of COVID-19 and where our counter-fraud resource has been sort of targeted. We've done various fraud risk assessments, we've done work in relation to food vouchers, and we've done work in relation to the distribution hubs, volunteer expenses and the like. So there's a whole host of work that we were involved in from a fraud perspective during 2021. So on pages 205 and 206, we'll now get into the final bit of the audit opinion. So across those 5 different categories, we assess each of those categories in terms of whether they pass or fail using a benchmark of 90%. So based upon the number of audits that received a positive assurance opinion, if 90% of those were adequate or higher, then that category passes. And what we will see within the table on page 206, that there were 2 failed categories during the year, one relating to the key risk areas, that there was 69% of audits that achieved an adequate or higher assurance level, and also the special investigations category also failed because of the financial losses associated with the purchase card fraud and also the various control failings in relation to payment mechanisms. The graph towards the bottom of page 206 gives some further sort of direction of travel in terms of the audit opinions that have occurred over the last 5 years. So summarising all of that work, at the top of page 207 of your pack, at paragraph 39, I am concluding that there is adequate assurance being given to the overall effectiveness of the organisation's governance, risk and control framework. I then conclude in terms of some of the higher level pieces of work that have been done in the year, drawing upon the SEN pieces of work, the strategic property piece of work, and also our support in relation to the COVID-19 response. And again, a number of those areas we'll continue to keep under review during 21-22. At paragraph 41, I refer to the financial management of the council and I've already highlighted through this report that the sales to cash debt recovery piece of work has been awarded limited assurance. In relation to our payroll control environment, whilst the corporate core payroll was adequate and there were no high level issues, which again is encouraging to note, there continues to be some issues in relation to the school's compliance programme with 3 limited assurances awarded, and there are various control failings in relation to schools' payroll that have been noted within those reports as well. At paragraph 42, towards the bottom of page 207, I refer to the number of limited audit opinions, and those have slightly increased to 14 from 10 last year. And again, we need to keep the various control issues under review during 21-22. Overleaf on page 208 of your pack, paragraph 43, I also refer to those 2 significant frauds that occurred. One was the purchase card fraud, and the other one was the attempted bank mandate fraud, which again we'll refer to a little bit later in the confidential agenda section of this meeting. Needless to say, the bank mandate fraud was an attempted fraud, and we got that money back very swiftly into the council's bank account. There's one other point of note within that paragraph, and that's in relation to our proactive counter-fraud work that we did in relation to taxi school providers during the year, where we gave over COVID relief monies to taxi providers, and there was some concerns that that money wasn't being passported to drivers and passenger assistants. So we assisted the transport team during the year, and again I'll refer to that a little bit later when we get to the confidential section. Moving on to our performance measures, and I very quickly touched upon that very early on in this report. We have 2 performance measures, one in relation to the issue of draft reports and the other in relation to our quality control questionnaire. It's pleasing to note that we have exceeded our target with 97% of system audits completed during the year, which given the year 2021, but we're very pleased with that result. And also the number of compliance audits completed was 93%. Those audits that were cancelled in relation to compliance audits were those areas that you would expect relating to learning disability homes that we couldn't go out and audit during the year, and those complex needs units that we just couldn't go out and visit. Towards the end of this report now, and finally, we do measure ourselves against compliance with the public sector internal audit standards, and on pages 208 and 209, that gives some further background information in relation to our standards and our self-assessment. So within the PSIAS, there are over 100 standards that we need to conform with, and we undertake a self-assessment. Once every 5 years, we do have an external assessment, which was last done in January 2018 by CIPFA, and that was very positive, with only a few recommendations being made. And what you'll see at paragraph 48 on page 209, this is where we say how compliant we are with the standards, and again, it's pleasing to note that we're 94% compliance with the standards. There are 4 areas of non-conformance where we don't plan to do any further improvements, and that's detailed towards the end on this page in paragraph 49. Where we have got some further actions proposed, they are attached to Appendix 3 to this report. However, one final statement to make is that in terms of our work carried out during 2021, we are conforming to the PSIAS, and also there's been no impairments or restrictions in the scope of our work, which would stop us from giving our annual audit opinion for the year. So, Chair, I'll be happy to take any questions. If not, can we please just note the report?
Yeah, I'd like to note the report, but I'd just like to say I think it was very good that we got the £216,000 back, because I mean that would be a significant loss to this council. I know it says it's gone up now to 184,000. What's the likelihood of getting some of that money back? Is it limited, or can you give us any indication?
Well, actually, it is pleasing to know that we have got all of the £166,000 back from the purchase card fraud. We were very transparent with the insurers. We did 2 very detailed pieces of work in relation to the investigation and the controls failings, which we shared with them. And because we were so transparent with them in terms of the control failings, and they were very complimentary of the reports, that they have paid us the loss at the moment. And again, subject to criminal investigation, that can be taken forward between the insurance and the subject as and when.
Members will be pleased to know that we're getting some of this money back. Obviously, fraud sadly is on the increase, and I think the audit need to be obviously very vigilant. Any questions from any members?
No questions, just on behalf of all of us, every taxpayer, never mind the whole committee, thank you very much for all your hard work on that. Makes a huge difference to the people in Staffordshire.
Members, like a 10-minute break now before we turn over the page and go to agenda item 12. Chris, what
Chair, we have factored in, through UFMA, we have factored in a break when we exclude the public. So we've just got the 2 more items.
Okay.
So if you're happy, we continue and then take the break at that point.
Fair enough, yeah.
Chairman, it's Bernard. I had a complaint sent to the council about myself. Do I need to leave this room for this particular item? No. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. For this year's report, we've collated information on complaints received from the period October 2020 to May 21, and that's to allow us to then work on a more annual basis. So for next year, we'll be able to report in line with the financial year as we have done in previous years. So the purpose of this report is to bring members up to date on activity and to correspond as closely as possible with any complaints that have come forward to the standards panel. The Council's Code of Conduct, as members will know, was revised and a new code was adopted in 2021, and this was in line with the Local Government Association's Model Code of Conduct. So in terms of the report proper, for the reporting period outlined, there were 14 complaints which were received and concluded. These are detailed in Appendix 1, and there were 2 additional complaints which were, at the point of the report being written, were still to be concluded. But I can update members of the committee that those 2 have now been concluded as follows. The first, regarding to social media abuse, the complainant didn't want to follow up the complaint any further. And the second one, that has been concluded, and the member in question is to receive training on the Code of Conduct and declarations of interest. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
My apologies. I'm sorry, I'm slightly struggling because for some unknown reason my papers have all disappeared. But we've adopted the LGA, which is what most councillors have done. Chris, is a review period in that? Because I believe the government are still looking at this, aren't they? From another meeting I went to, I think the government have accepted that that we're going to adopt the LGA, but I believe there are some further considerations being made by the government. Am I wrong in that? I was actually at a meeting yesterday that indicated that. Am I wrong in saying that? Are we likely to review it if that's the case?
I mean, we'll always keep our Code of Conduct under review with any sort of legislative changes or recommendations. I'm not aware of the changes that you're referring to, Councillor Hewitt, but maybe we can pick that up outside of the meeting. But yes, if there are any changes that come our way, we want to ensure that we're consistent in our approach along with other councils in the rest of the country.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, through you again. Yeah, it I was at a meeting yesterday about this in Cannock District Council, and they quite clearly talked about a further government review on this, and that there was a decision taken to adopt them and then look at it again. But I have no more than top line, and thank you for the offer of just taking it up outside of this. And thank you, Chair.
Just going to add a bit, yeah, it's fluid, it always is, and as it changes we have to change to change with the law. But this really is just the report that's brought to us, and I can get it back. I know why you've lost it, because you're going into the private bits. So I'll show you what to do on your computer in a minute when we have a break. Yeah. It's happened to me before. I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, this is fluid and it changes all the time.
Thanks, Caroline. Thank you, Phil. Right, that leaves us to the forward plan then.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. This document finalises and outlines the proposed agendas for the remaining meetings of the Audit and Standards Committee for this particular civic year. It captures all of the required documents that you as committee members are required to see, together with any particular follow-ups regarding the limited assurance and the high-risk area reports that you will receive as part of the future agenda packs. In the past, previous committee has requested a number of items to come back to this particular committee for further consideration, mainly to ensure that the recommendations made within those reports have actually been acted upon and to gain that assurance from those relevant officers. In terms of moving forward, if there are any items that you wish to include on the agenda following the items that are presented to you as part of the private agenda, which we'll move into next, then please highlight those and I will accommodate those on the forward plan to make sure that they come back to yourselves. So really this is for you, it's for information. If there are any particular areas that you want or you feel haven't been represented, then please let me know and I'll hopefully take those forward. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lisa. I think you've got a nice stony silence. I would just say on the review of joint funding and billing for CCGs, well, CCGs are no longer, they've gone now, haven't they? So it's got a new title now, is that right?
Thank you, Chair. That particular point was in relation to CHC funding, so it was the continuing health care funding that's given to social care patients, so that we ensure that the system's robust to be able to identify that funding prior to the care starting, so that we receive all funding due to ourselves.
Okay.